Welcome to Vet First Voice, VA OSDBU's Service Disabled, Veteran-Owned Small Business, and Veteran-Owned Small Business Success Story video series. Today we have with us Brian Flood, CEO of DecisionPoint Corporation. We're excited to highlight your journey as a service disabled veteran-owned small business and your experience working with VA. To start, Brian, could you provide us a little introduction about yourself and tell us about your company?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, ma'am. Born and raised in New York City, one of four children. My father was a B-17 pilot in World War II. He was shot down in Germany and spent about 17 months as a prisoner of war in Eastern Germany. Went to school and when I was about 20 years old, realized that I didn't really have a plan. So I went into the United States Army at the age of 20, went to OCS and showed up at Fort Benning a long time ago. I'm pretty old. And that sort of is the beginning of the journey. Like many of my peers who are veterans, I think the foundational elements of our lives and the things that we achieved later in our lives were built, in training and built in execution and built as being part of the unit mission first kind of approach to life. And I think that really contributed to all the lessons I've learned over the years. Started DecisionPoint in 2011. And as we were talking earlier, until about 2019, it was a one or two person company.
Right.
So 8 years of a lot of hard work that resulted in a lot of lessons and a lot of education that proved very valuable later, but not that economic growth that you're looking for. And then we won our first prime contract with United States Transportation Command down at Scott Air Force Base in just before the end of the fiscal year in September of 2019. Now, 6 years later, we're about 325 people. We support many more missions in Transcom, Air Force Cyber, Department of State, Department of Veterans Affairs, Department of Homeland Security, Army, Centers for Disease Control, and across a wide range of critical information technology services and mission services. It's been a privilege. I've learned a lot, learned more from the failures than from the success.
Absolutely.
But very, very grateful for the journey.
Okay, so I have heard a lot in these few minutes, but you have a story because you have a journey. And so what I would like to do is I want to unpackage this just a little bit. And so you did speak about your father's military career. You spoke about yours and starting it young and still not knowing what you wanted to do when you grew up. So, but your military career and your military service, it did influence your path as an entrepreneur or as a business person. Tell me a little bit how that military career influenced you.
I think what I learned at a very young age, and a very formative part of my life still, was the concept of unit and mission first. Don't leave any man or woman behind. Serve a greater purpose than your own, your own set of goals.
Absolutely.
And I think that being of service to others, seeking to be part of something greater than myself, serving a greater good. In the military, we're not perfect. Military service is not perfect. Military execution is not perfect. But the foundational elements of being one of many in service to a common goal, I think, really became a foundational element of what I've been able to achieve, and when I've fallen short of that ethos, it's helped me get take stock of myself, hold myself accountable to that, and take the course correction necessary to get back on the right path.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. Now, you also spoke when we first started in regards to various federal organizations that you've had the opportunity to work with. And as part of that journey in the federal contracting world, there are many steps along the way. So tell us about your path to federal contracting, and most importantly, what motivated you to pursue opportunities with the Department of Veteran Affairs?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, I started the company in 2011, was relatively a neophyte in government contracting. One of the transformational opportunities for me was in 2013. I attended the Veterans in Procurement class. That's actually more than a class, 3 days worth of training that has been put in place and masterfully mastered by the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce for years. So that was in 2013. We were a one-person company at the time. And I'm pretty convinced that the leadership at VIP, looked kindly upon me because I really wasn't a mature enough company at that point to participate, but they opened their doors to me, and I made friendships there that I carry on to this day, and I learned about kind of the fundamentals, the functionals, the blocking and tackling of government contracting, and that education. Sort of, even though it took us another 6 years to really begin to grow, that education sort of drove the activities and efforts to achieve some of the things that they recommended: a GSA schedule, a facility clearance, subcontracting relationships with larger companies, an understanding of what an RFP is and how to break it down and how to shred it and how to respond to it. And it gave me the foundational underpinning, I think, for everything that came after that. I think that supporting the Department of Veterans Affairs is a natural extension of the service that I did when I was on active duty. It is an extraordinary privilege to work on programs that are directly analyzing and measuring the efficacy and efficiency of what I refer to as quality of life programs for the veteran.
Understand.
That address some of the most vexing challenges that veterans have in their post-service lives. We're all familiar with them: PTSD, suicide, addiction, alcoholism, things like that manifest themselves in a much greater and a higher percentage of veterans than they do in the rest of the population. And VA, I believe, partially exists to help veterans address those challenges, overcome them, and have the quality of life that they've earned. And I think being part of programs like V-Signals is one of them in the Veterans Experience Office. It's an extraordinary privilege to contribute even a little bit to making sure that those programs are properly aligned with the needs of millions of veterans around the country.
And Brian, you all have, what, 2 or 3 contracts?
We do.
With the Department of Veteran Affairs?
So we support the Veterans Experience Office in a program with a partner of ours called Medallia. And what we do, the program is called V-Signals, and it measures the performance and the quality of delivery of programs that are quality of life programs for veterans. On the financial side, we work with DecisionLens on helping specifically the VHA ensure that every dollar spent is actually a dollar that enhances the delivery of healthcare for the veteran community. And then we work with an incredible group of people at Deloitte, kind of in alignment with them through our VEO contract, through V-Signals. They really get into the analytics of measuring the quality of delivering of the program. And the patriots that I've met at Deloitte they're extraordinary men and women.
Okay. You also mentioned earlier that when you were in the VIP program, the Veteran Institute of Procurement program, back in 2013, you were a team of one.
Yes.
And there was a journey to get where you finally got and where you are today. And so back then, when you look at that level of maturity of the company as one, it was not an easy process to get where you are today. And there were many challenges that you experienced. There were many things that you had to do, I'm quite sure, in order to move forward. So every business faces challenges, especially in federal contracting. What were some of the key obstacles you encountered, and how did you overcome them?
I think managing time. We all have a finite amount of resources, and the greatest resource we have is time. And understanding in driving the company forward when you're sort of the face of the organization, this army of one, or
yes.
And as you begin to grow, making sure that I learned how to be honest with myself about what were true opportunities and what were going to be, the proverbial dry hole, if you will, and really put my greatest effort into things that were going to provide longer term strategic value to the company and for our ability to grow. And I made a lot of, I made some mistakes in aligning myself with what the right opportunities were, but I think you learn from it and you move forward. I think that the second thing is how important it is to hire the right people who share your culture, who share your view, who share your energy. Years ago, when in a job I had, the CEO I worked for said, our inventory walks out the door every night. And what he meant is we're just a collection of people.
Right.
If we don't have people of character and integrity and effort and creativity, it will be very, very hard to sort of achieve our goals, to serve whatever constituencies we're seeking to serve. So hiring people who align with our values and our energy and our commitment to that, to whatever mission we're serving, is essential. And I think and then when you begin to do that, that attracts more people who are of that like mind.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that creates culture.
Absolutely. And we had an opportunity to talk offline.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talked about some of those characteristics of being a service disabled, veteran owned small business. And so you say that aligns with almost the makeup of the company. Let's talk a little bit about what those characteristics that you see as a service disabled, veteran owned small business that have helped you to get to where you are today.
I mean, I think it begins with service. I think to be successful in a military environment, you have to have commitment to the unit. You have to remain ready. You have to remain cohesive. You have to execute the mission, and you have to execute the mission through completion.
Absolutely.
And anything that interferes with any of those things has to be resolved or redirected or course corrected in order to achieve the outcome of the mission, which is paramount to everything. And so I think that the concept of developing a strategic plan, developing a target, developing an outcome that you're seeking, and moving along the paradigm that gets you to that outcome that is mandated by whatever the mission, I think is something we as veterans and we as service disabled veterans bring to our entrepreneurial efforts.
Right.
I think the other thing is, and as I mentioned to you earlier, we make mistakes. The military makes mistakes. Veterans make mistakes. Active duty leaders make mistakes. But I think I'm drawn to other people who've traveled a similar journey to me, who've served, who've encountered challenges, both physically or professionally, and who have endured and overcome.
Right.
And so we try at our company, and I try personally, to really engage with other companies that are similar to ours, smaller in nature, led by service disabled veterans who had a similar military experience to me. I find that there's a commonality that drives us, and that we understand similarly what it takes to be successful.
And when I hear you say that, it also aligns with a business owner.
Sure.
Because when you start talking about that perseverance, that persistence, being a part of a bigger team, something bigger and greater than what you are, and also about compliance. In business, we think about compliance, risk mitigation, et cetera. But when that military part of that complete picture of you and that carries over into that business, would you say that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think too, one of the things that when you're just speaking came to mind, I can't remember who owns the statement, but it was about, always be kind because you have no idea what somebody else is living through on that given day. And I think that sort of attitude of a hand of help out and a hand of, and that sort of receptivity to help others move themselves along ultimately results in greater accomplishments, selfish accomplishments for ourselves and our company.
Absolutely. How has working with VA impacted your company's growth, your employees, as well as your mission? How is that relationship with VA? And let's tie that in to your military career.
I think some of the challenges, some of the quality of life challenges that VA addresses every day through VHA, through VEO, through VBA through an assortment, through cemeteries, through an assortment of programs, are just critical for the health of the nation, critical to demonstrate that we take care of people who have served, who've sacrificed sometimes to the greatest degree possible, and their family members. And I think being part of that community that does that has an impact on everyone in our company. They're aware of the services we're providing. I think it's also made me more aware of paying attention to hiring veterans, to providing an environment, whether it's compensation or whether it's healthcare or whether it's other types of quality of life services. Pay attention to ensure that we're taking care of the well-being of our employees while we take care of the well-being of veterans or others in other mission spaces that we serve. I think when you have the opportunity to see up close the extraordinary commitment, passion, and service that the Veterans Administration has to the veteran community, it leaves a mark on us. And it's I'm sure you realize this as someone who's worked in the VA for a long time. It's easy to criticize.
Yes.
But when you are inside the four walls, serving as a contractor, it changes your perspective. Like the perspective I had as a consumer, as a patient of VA, changed dramatically when I became a partner to the VA in the delivery of services.
Absolutely.
The difficulty, the complexity, the sheer volume is extraordinary. So it taught me a lot about humility.
Yes.
And the extraordinary sense of service and passion that the hundreds of thousands of employees here bring to the veteran community.
Well, I want to thank you, Brian, because we really do appreciate that. We also spoke briefly about how a first impression means a lot, and doing work with the Department of Veteran Affairs, or whether it's with a other federal agency or in the commercial world, that diversity is very important. But we also talked about how you deliver. What message would you share with other veteran entrepreneurs that are thinking about doing business with the VA or doing business at all? Because I remember one thing that was very important, and we talked about this back in 2013 when during the VIP about being a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. It is crucial, it is important, and it is the best of the best. But when you walk in there and you're talking to someone about a potential opportunity, that's not what you start with.
No.
You talk about those things. So what is that message that you say?
Understand what your purpose is, right? I mean, identify a mission space within the Veterans Administration, within VA, and understand what capability, expertise, impact, idea, innovation you have that's going to drive forward that part of VA to better serve the veterans community, and then get very smart on that. Come in with the vision, communicate that vision, and make yourself invaluable to the VA or a partner that's one of the traditional long-standing contractors here. I think being an SDVOSB is a good foundation, but bringing value to a program that you want to support is essentially important. And I think being able to define, the proverbial elevator speech, being able to define that value in 30 seconds or 60 seconds to a major contractor like Deloitte, our partner, or a major program head at VHA or VEO or VBA, I think is essential. I think that's the way to win. And then be relentless in your pursuit.
I think in a nutshell, what you're saying, do your homework.
Absolutely. Show up ready.
Be prepared. Show up ready to do what you're going to do.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for sharing your journey. It truly exemplifies what a veteran-owned small business should be doing, how they should be doing. It also is being very transparent. It's not easy to get where you are, and you acknowledge that, you own it. But at the end of the day, what you're saying, and I hope I'm capturing this, is be ready, be prepared, and that there is nothing that a service-disabled veteran-owned small business can't do.
I very much agree, ma'am. And thank you for the time and the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.